The film opens in Alaska. A man named Winston is in an isolated cabin. Just before FBI agents burst in to arrest him, he is met by Deputy Marshal Madeleine Harris, as Winston has been dealing with a crime boss named Moretti. In an effort to save his skin, Winston offers to testify against Moretti in exchange for full immunity. Madeleine reluctantly agrees. Madeleine escorts Winston as they are set to fly to Seattle for the testimony. They board a plane and are met by their pilot, Darrell Booth. He takes off, and Madeleine notices a scratch on the back of his head, but Booth brushes it off as an occupational hazard. Winston then looks down at the floor and sees documents and photos belonging to the real Darrell Booth. He tries to get Madeleine's attention to warn her, but she thinks he is trying to get himself free. The pilot turns around to give Winston a sickness bag, and Madeleine notices what appears to be a bloody wound on his arm. She then asks him how he knew they were going to Seattle when she hadn't mentioned it. Sensing that she is starting to catch on, the pilot reveals himself to be a hitman, whose real name is never revealed, sent by Moretti to kill Winston by leaving him and Madeleine somewhere for the wildlife to get them. Madeleine fights the hitman and gets knocked unconscious. Winston talks to the hitman about his dealings with Moretti. Just as Madeleine starts to wake up, she gets a taser out and gets it ready for when the hitman comes back, and she zaps him unconscious before tying him up. Madeleine undoes Winston's chains so he can help her. Madeleine takes control of the plane. Just before they end up crashing to the ground, Winston finds out that the hitman got information on him and his mother to threaten him into cooperating. She tries to contact help and gets in touch with fellow Deputy Caroline Van Zandt to alert her that the trip has been compromised and that there might be a leak in the department working with Moretti. Caroline investigates while Madeleine also ends up in touch with another pilot, her son, who guides her through the skies on the way to land in Anchorage. Madeleine later learns that the real Darrell Booth was gruesomely murdered. The hitman regains consciousness and begins to taunt Madeleine about an incident from her past. He mentions that someone in her care was burned alive and left to die. Madeleine beats the hitman back into unconsciousness and is made by Winston to explain herself. Madeleine explains that she was made to look after a woman in Mexico named Maria, whose boyfriend had business with the cartels. Maria asks to take a bath unsupervised, and Madeleine obliged her despite that being against protocol. A Sicario ended up throwing a Molotov cocktail through the window, and since Maria was handcuffed to the bathtub, she was unable to flee, and Madeleine could not save her. She was demoted to a desk job, and she has been haunted by her mistake ever since. Caroline gets back in touch with Madeleine and says she has a team waiting in Anchorage to help her. Madeleine starts to get suspicious that Caroline might be the leak. She gets in touch with Deputy Director Courage to alert him of the situation and to try and catch up to Caroline. After encountering a shipwreck on the coastline, Madeleine and Winston are able to give her son a clue as to their location. This helps his radar pick them up and make it easier to guide them. The plane starts heading toward a mountain. Madeleine just barely manages to avoid hitting it but crashes through a huge pile of snow. As she flies upward, the hitman's knife slides down and into his grasp. He starts to cut himself loose and undoes his cuffs after stealing Madeleine's shades. The hitman frees himself and stabs Winston twice before attempting to strangle Madeleine. Winston pulls the knife out and cuts the belt the hitman was using, and Madeleine incapacitates him by hitting him with a flare to the chest and then knocking him out with a fire extinguisher. Madeleine applies first aid to Winston, but he is losing a lot of blood and is starting to fade out. She contacts her son to try and find a faster way to get to Anchorage, and he tries to help her even though it might mean they would lose fuel faster, but she vows not to let Winston die. Winston starts to apologize for the crimes he's committed. This causes her to remember overhearing where Winston said he was sending money, as that is the same location Courage says he was coming from. This makes her realize Courage was the leak all along. She contacts Caroline to admit her mistake to her and to warn her that Courage is coming for her. Madeleine starts flying closer towards the landing strip. She tries to contact Caroline again, only to be answered by Courage, who informs Madeleine that Caroline got into a fatal car accident, presumably hit by one of Moretti's goons. Madeleine blows up on Courage and says she knows he is the leak and that she will expose him. Two carrier jets fly next to the plane to make sure they don't endanger civilians by potentially crashing. Madeleine gets in touch with her son again, but the hitman tries to attack again, and Madeleine shoots him twice. Her son frantically tries to guide Madeleine as she starts to lose fuel, and Winston starts to lose consciousness. Police and paramedics wait on the scene as Madeleine makes a rough landing. The plane door opens, and the hitman is ejected from the plane, landing on the strip where he is plowed by a truck. The plane comes to a halt, and Winston wakes up. The medics arrive for Winston. Madeleine meets her son face to face for a moment, until she spots another one of Moretti's goons going into the ambulance with Winston. Madeleine runs over in time to witness the assassin trying to suffocate Winston until she shoots him dead. She grabs the assassin's phone to directly speak to Courage and assure him that he is going down. This is where the film ends. Kindly subscribe to this channel, click the like and share buttons to support this channel. Thanks for watching.